Hello, everybody. Andrew from A&J coming back at you with another bit of Commander speculation here. Now, you might not have known this, but I am currently the best Magic player in the world, and I have been for about 37 years now. So whatever I say is absolutely as good as gold. This really isn't even speculation. This is just me telling you how it is. All right, no, but seriously, before I get into the cards, of which I have 15 here, I just wanted to kind of comment on some feedback I've been getting. I do not play competitive EDH. I know some people use like power scaling, so these are not level 8, 9, 10 decks. Going off that scale, I want to say the decks I generally play and enjoy playing in my groups are right, maybe capping out at 6, 7, right around there. So, if you're looking for competitive EDH, some of these still might come into play, but that's not really my specialty. So, just wanted to clear that up real quick before I get into these. All right, first up we have Gargos Vicious Watcher, 3 and 3 green for an 8/7 Vigilant Hydra, Legendary Hydra. Hydra spells cost 4 less to cast for you. That's okay, cool. I mean, Magic seems to print a Hydra about, every set anymore. So even if he's not going to be a commander, I mean, that effect right there is already a good synergy for a green beady face deck. And then his last ability, whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, Gargos Vicious Watcher fights up to one target creature you don't control. Okay, that's awesome because your stuff's going to get targeted with removal. Maybe if you're playing some beat face stuff, you're going to be targeting it and he gets to start fighting around. Awesome ability. I think he's going to be pretty popular. All right, next up is Nightpack Ambusher. 2 and 2 green for a 4/4 with flash. Just right off it without reading any farther into it. 4 mana for a 4/4 is about par. It's about what you're looking for. Giving him flash there, that really helps him stand out, and I like that so far. But his other abilities, he's a wolf, by the way. His other abilities are other wolves and werewolves you control get +1/+1. Okay, cool. So he's got an Anthem effect. And at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't cast a spell this turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Okay, cool. Anthem effect and flash, two really good reasons to have them in a deck. But the fact that if you kind of start fizzling out or you're waiting for, your opponent's turns to happen before you spend all your mana, so you're not doing much on your turns, this is perfect for that because it'll keep giving you more and more board state. Now I'm going to start. I think I'm going to kind of lay these out a little differently from now on. All right. Third card, Safara Sky's Blade, 4 and 3 white for a 7/7 legendary angel. You may pay 1 and tap 4 untapped creatures you control with flying rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Okay, alternative costs are great in Commander. It has flying and lifelink, and other creatures you control with flying have indestructible. Now this kind of fits into this tribal flyers theme that M20 did, where they just have a lot of synergy between things that have flying. I think it's a really interesting quote-unquote tribal. I really like the support they're giving for it. And even if you don't have a whole lot with flying or you're not trying to build around this quote tribal deck, how many of your big endgame creatures are going to have flying as your form of evasion? Unless you're playing green, of course, then it's going to be trample, maybe reach. But, with white, you're normally going to have flying, maybe vigilance. So that just slots into a lot of decks already just because of how awesome it makes other flyers and how hard it makes them to get rid of. Next up, Bishop of Wings. 2 white for a 1/4 human cleric. Whenever an angel enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. Whenever an angel you control dies, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Alright, a little more. This guy's kind of just like value central here. If you're playing white, especially mono white, you're going to be playing a lot of angels more than likely. Whenever those angels come in, you benefit. Whenever they leave, you benefit. I mean, there's really not much to go into on this card. He's just a lot of good use in a lot of decks because of his abilities. All right, next up we got Villis, Broker of Blood. Now, the one big reason I wanted to mention that I'm not playing competitive EDH is because cards like this, 8 mana cost, yeah, you can cheat it in a little earlier with mana rocks or some really interesting tricks, but on its own, I wouldn't say he's anywhere near competitive. But he is 5 and 3 black for an 8/8 flying demon, legendary demon. You can pay a black, pay 2 life. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. And whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. So that's really cool. Just built in, you pay a black, you lose 2 life, you give something -1/-1, and then you draw 2 cards off of it. It's a very efficient greed effect. And, I mean, he's a good body. He's just, especially if you're going to be playing mono black good stuff or green black good stuff, you're going to have the mana for it. He is definitely good stuff. And that giving -1/-1 can really help with not only combat tricks, but maybe getting around indestructible. Okay, next up, Icon of Ancestry. 3 colorless mana artifact. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. Okay, just basic Anthem effect, basic Anthem mana cost. That's not bad. But pay 3 and tap it. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card of the chosen type from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, cool. So it's a specific, like, I'll say a tribal Anthem effect, but it also helps you get more and more out of your deck. I find this to be a very interesting take. I really like what they're doing with Anthem effects lately. Instead of just generic creatures you control get this, or creatures of this color get this. I like that they're expanding what the creatures of X type are doing, and I really like seeing cards like this because they're getting pretty creative with the effects on them too. So I think that's going to be a popular one. Alright, next up, Tail's End. 1 in a blue instant. Counter target activated ability, triggered ability, or legendary spell. To me, this kind of feels like something that would have fit perfectly in Kamigawa if they were trying to do their own version of a Void Slime. Because it's countering the abilities, which are normally tough to touch. There aren't very many cards that let you interact with them. But the legendary spell thing, that could mean hitting their commander. That could mean hitting a legendary spell, which is now a thing. That could mean there are so many different legendary permanents or legendary spells anymore. I feel like this is just really solid, especially for 1 in a blue, so it's not even 2 solid blue. I think it would still be good at 2 solid blue, but I think this card's just straight value, especially if you want to kind of control what's going on a little. Right. Moving on, Shared Summons. If you guys watched my box opening video, I geeked out over this a little bit, but it is a 3 and 2 green instant. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards with different names, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Okay, so it's not as crazy as Tooth and Nail, but you still get 2 different creature cards for 5 mana. I mean, it's a really good tutor effect. Green's normally lacking on the tutors. This gets you, well, it doesn't even matter that it says with different names if you're playing it in Commander, but it's getting you 2 different creatures, putting them in your hand, really setting you up for it, and it's at instant speed, so you can kind of watch the board, see what's going on first. Right? I feel like I'm building a mural as I set these cards down. So if you see me fidgeting with them a little, trying to straighten them up like that, that's why, because it just looks really pretty to me. Anyway, next up we have Flood of Tears. 4 and 2 blue for a sorcery. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Okay, so it's so far a slightly more expensive but slightly more effective evacuation. Okay. But if you return 4 or more non-token permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Okay, that's really cool. That's what makes it stand out. It's a very effective reset button. And not only that, but if you are getting hit by it more than pretty much not getting hit by it, you're going to get some benefit out of it too. You're going to get back on the board, so you don't have to wait for the entire turn rotation to come around and then rebuild when there are going to be a handful of people mad at you. I like it. I think it's really solid, especially just because of all the value in it, and I always value reset buttons decently highly, so I think this is going to be one of the best ones for blue. Not anywhere near as good as Cyclonic Rift, of course, but definitely a good one. Alright, next up, Marauding Raptor. As soon as I saw this guy, I realized that even in Standard, until a couple things rotate, he feeds right into literally a 2-card infinite combo, which, cool. I don't think it's going to happen, but I thought that was funny. But then I thought about EDH uses, and I'm terrified of him in Animar, just because of the synergy. But he is 1 red for a 2/3 dinosaur. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Marauding Raptor deals 2 damage to it. If a dinosaur is dealt damage this way, Marauding Raptor gets +2/+0. Okay, because of the Enrage mechanic, this guy's really solid if you're playing a Dino Tribal deck. Not only that, he's making your creatures cheaper though, so even if you're not going with a Dino Tribal and you're playing stuff with at least 3 in the butt end of it, that's pretty effective. Yes, it does open them up to some removal. Even with the fact that I'm playing fairly casual EDH, you don't see a lot of like shocks and bolt effects. So yeah, they are still a little easier to get to, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be super easy for them to get shot right down as soon as they come in. But creatures costing less is always great. Like I said, Animar, I see some synergy there just because they like making everything cheaper, and I'm just terrified at how quickly they can get a Kozilek or an Ulamog or an Emrakul out on the board because of it. Alright, next up is the new green Leyline. I actually really like this one. I know people are probably thinking of Elf Tribal because of it, but I think it's got quite a few uses, even just for its... Well, I'll tell you what the card does first, then I'll get into that. Leyline of Abundance is 2 and 2 green for an enchantment. If it's in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it in play. Whenever you tap a creature for mana, add an additional green. Okay, cool. So if you have a lot of mana dorks, this is going to be useful. But its last ability is pay 6 and 2 green. It's an activated ability. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. There's so much synergy with +1/+1 counter decks. There are Horde decks that would love this. I think even if you're not using it for the mana dork ability, just having that pump sitting on the board, maybe even as soon as you open the game, yeah, it'll paint a little bit of a target on you, or it'll draw out some early removal. But I think this card's going to be really good for a lot of decks. Okay, next up is Agent of Treachery. He is 5 and 2 blue for a 2/3 human rogue. Okay, his power and toughness are really lame for how much he costs, but he's got a control-y effect to him, or like blatant thievery effect to him. Whenever he enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. And there's no control it until he leaves or give it back at this end of time, so that justifies the cost a little. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. Okay, Empress Galena really likes this. There are a whole bunch of other blue cards that would really like this, even in a couple other colors. If I'm remembering correctly, white has some stuff around, but I know it is predominantly blue. But that's just crazy, because if you're playing a deck that likes to steal other people's stuff, and you can keep them out for 1 or 2 turns, you're getting a lot of card advantage with them. Alright, getting into the home stretch here, I have Ajani, Strength of the Pride. 2 and 2 white for a legendary Planeswalker Ajani. Comes in with 5 loyalty counters. First off, that's really efficient for a 4 mana cost coming with 5. I like that. But his abilities are +1. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you control plus the number of Planeswalkers you control. Okay, it's kind of the new Ajani thing, gaining life based off of what your board is. I like it. His -2. Create a 2/2 white cat soldier creature token named Ajani's Pridemate with, quote, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Ajani's Pridemate. Okay, I really like that he can actually kind of make some tokens now, especially since I feel like the Pridemates are really underutilized. Yes, in EDH they're not that great, but being able to create a handful of them would be really cool, especially because his plus ability already likes you having tokens. So maybe you have Anointed Procession, Doubling Season, one of those effects on the field, and you can just start pooping out cats and gaining a crap ton of life. I really like it. But the real winner is his his ultimate. If you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, exile Ajani and each artifact and creature your opponents control. It's really weird seeing an alt cost 0, but that's really solid removal. It's entirely one-sided. It's exile, so it's more difficult to deal with. It doesn't touch their land, so it's not unfair, but uh, just wow. I really like him. I'm not even going to be touching him for a token deck. I have a Super Friends, aka Tea Time deck that I'm rocking right now. He's getting right in there, and I think it's going to just be really fun. Alright, next up, Mu Yanling, Sky Dancer. First off, 3-drop Planeswalker. Always great to see that. Second off, while I don't really feel like her +2 and her -3 are that great, yes, the -3 is good because you can kind of manufacture some board presence, you can manufacture a blocker. I wouldn't even focus on either of those too much. Well, not the -3 as much as I would the -2, and not the -2 as much as I would her alt. But 1 and 2 blue, Legendary Planeswalker, Yanling, 2 loyalty counters, cool. +2 until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gets -2, -0, and loses flying. Okay, nice. We got a little, hey, don't hit me. This thing's gonna not hit me that hard. -3, create a 4/4 blue elemental bird creature token with flying. Okay, that's the manufacturing of defense I was talking about. Like I said, it can be good in a pinch, but I really like this next one, and that's her ultimate. For -8, you get an emblem with islands you control have tap, draw a card. Okay, with blue, about the most efficient you can get is 1 mana for 1 card. Yes, there are some combos that can kind of exploit maybe getting more cards for less mana, but those also generally involve having infinite mana of some form. So I don't really want to include them here, but her just being able to turn your islands into card drawing machines, I mean, it's like Underworld Connections, but way more efficient. Yeah, it's a little bit to get to, but imagine you're playing mono blue, you can kind of control the board a little bit, and now all of a sudden, if you start leaving just mana open on your opponent's turns and everybody's looking going, crap, are they going to start fishing or are they going to start countering? We don't know. People have to play more passively around you and a little more cautiously. So I think she's going to be a powerhouse. I know people are gearing up to see her in Standard because she's a 3-drop Planeswalker, but I really like the implications for EDH. Right, last up is Cavalier of Night. He is 2 and 3 black for an elemental knight that is a 4/5 with lifelink. Okay, I always like seeing lifelink. I like that he's a little tougher than he is beady. That's kind of fits into how 1 or 2 of my black-ish decks work. But he has, whenever he enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, destroy target creature and opponent controls. Okay, cool, he's a Bone Splinters on a stick. I like that. Whenever he dies, return target card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, so he's a good way of having board presence because of the big butt. He's got lifelink, so you can kind of keep yourself in the lead. When he comes into play Bone Splinters, whenever he dies, return target creature with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to play. I mean, that's just a lot of value for a 5 mana card. Now, yes, it is 3 solid black in the mana cost, so it might not be amazing in 3-color decks. In 2-color decks, I'd say this is still viable. Monocolor decks, of course he is, especially with how many black effects you have to double tap your swamps. But, alright everybody, that's going to wrap up today's video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know below. Do you disagree with any of these picks? I mean, I'm guessing there's going to be 1 or 2 that you might. Please, let's discuss it. I'm always curious to see where you're coming from. Maybe you'll tell me something I didn't know about them or think about. Maybe Leyline of Abundance is going to be way more powerful than I thought it was. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. But thank you for tuning in. Andrew out.